Before we descend into the shadows of Natanz and walk the sterile corridors where the future of the Middle East was being spun in centrifuges, I have a request. If you want to understand the machinery of intelligence, the operations that governments deny, and the invisible wars fought while you sleep, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. We are about to expose a story that doesn't exist in any official record. Now look at the facility from the satellite images. To the untrained eye, the Natanz fuel enrichment plant is a fortress. It is buried under meters of reinforced concrete and earth, defended by batteries of anti-aircraft guns, and ringed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' most elite units. It is designed to withstand airstrikes, bunker busters, and the full kinetic might of the West. The Iranians built it with the assumption that the threat would come from the sky, raining down in fire and steel. They built it to survive a war, but they forgot the fundamental rule of security, a rule that every intelligence officer learns before they are ever allowed into the field. Walls are only as strong as the people who are allowed to walk through them. In 2010, the world was focused on the cyber weapon, known as Stuxnet. They talked about zero-day exploits, programmable logic controllers, and the brilliance of code that could destroy machinery. But code does not walk itself into an air-gapped facility. A virus, no matter how sophisticated, cannot jump across a physical gap where no internet connection exists. Someone has to carry it. Someone has to bridge the divide between the outside world and the hermetically sealed heart of the Iranian nuclear program. This is not the story of a high-ranking general or a defecting scientist with a briefcase full of secrets. This is the story of a man whose name you will never know. A man who possessed the highest security clearance of all, not because he was important, but because he was invisible. He was the man who emptied the trash, the man who buffed the floors, the man who had a master key that opened the doors that the scientists were too busy to open for themselves. He was the janitor, and in the eyes of the Mossad, he was the most dangerous weapon in the entire Middle East. The operation didn't begin with a bang or a dramatic boardroom meeting in Tel Aviv. It began with a simple observation. Israeli analysts, poring over the social dynamics of Iranian secure facilities, noticed a blind spot in the Persian class structure. The engineers and the nuclear physicists were the aristocracy of the regime. They were watched, yes, but they were also arrogant. They did not look at the service staff. When a scientist walked down a hallway and passed a cleaner, he didn't see a potential security threat. He saw furniture. He saw a non-entity. This psychological invisibility was the flaw in the armor. The regime spent millions vetting the scientists, monitoring their phone calls, and watching their families. But the cleaning contracts? They were subcontracted, and then subcontracted again. The vetting was bureaucratic, not existential. Deep within the archives of the Mossad, a file was opened. It wasn't marked with a red page, the symbol for an assassination target. It was marked with a blue tab, recruitment. The objective was simple but audacious. Find a man inside the facility who was invisible enough to move freely, but angry enough to betray his country. They didn't need a hero. They needed a ghost. Chapter 2. The echo of grievance. Farhad was 45 years old, with calloused hands and a back that hurried into a permanent stoop from years of looking at the floor. He lived in a modest apartment in the southern districts of Tehran, where the air was thick with smog and the promises of the revolution felt like distant memories. He was not a political activist. He was not a radical. He was a father, and he was a man who was drowning. His son, Reza, had been born with a congenital heart defect. In a different country, or perhaps in a different social class within Iran, it would have been a manageable condition. But for a contract cleaner working for a logistics company that serviced government facilities, the cost of the necessary surgery was an impossible sum. He had petitioned the state charities. He had asked his supervisors for a loan. He had been met with the bureaucratic indifference that crushes the soul slower, but more thoroughly, than any torture chamber. Farhad's resentment wasn't ideological, it was personal. He watched the nuclear scientists drive into the facility in their imported Peugeots and Benzes. He saw the Revolutionary Guard commanders with their Rolex watches, purchased with funds skimmed from the very sanctions-busting operations they claimed to despise. He was cleaning the toilets of men who were getting rich while his son was slowly fading away. Mossad spotters didn't find Farhad by magic. They found him through data. Intelligence in the 21st century is less about looking through binoculars and more about analyzing patterns of financial distress. The agency had flagged hundreds of low-level employees at sensitive sites who had significant debts or medical crises. Farhad was just a data point until a field operative in Tehran, operating under the cover of a medical equipment importer, made a verify and assess run. The approach was soft. It always is. You don't walk up to a man and ask him to spy for Israel. You offer him a lifeline. It happened in a park near the chaotic bustle of the Tehran Bazaar. Farhad was sitting on a bench eating a meager lunch, his face etched with the exhaustion of a man who hasn't slept in weeks. A stranger sat down next to him. The stranger didn't speak Farsi with an accent. He spoke the street dialect of Tehran, the language of the tired and the frustrated. "The air is heavy today," the stranger said. "It is always heavy," Farhad replied, not looking up. The conversation drifted as conversations do in that part of the world, to the cost of living, the price of medicine, the difficulty of raising a family. When Farhad mentioned his son, the stranger listened. He didn't offer pity. He offered a solution. "I work for a foundation," the stranger lied smoothly. "We help families who have been overlooked by the system. We have connections with specialists in Europe, in Germany." For Farhad, the word Germany was synonymous with salvation. It meant advanced medicine. It meant hope. "Why would you help me?" Farhad asked, suspicion warring with desperation. "Because we need people who are reliable," the stranger said. "We need people who can help us understand the logistics of the city. Nothing illegal, just information. Business information. This is the classic false flag recruitment." Farhad didn't think he was talking to the Mossad. He thought he was talking to a corporate competitor, or perhaps a foreign NGO operating in the gray market. He didn't care. He saw a path to saving his son. Over the next 3 months, the relationship was cultivated. Small tasks. Taking photos of shipping manifests. Reporting on which companies were delivering food to the facility. In exchange, cash appeared. Then, a visa for his wife and son to travel to Turkey for a consultation. By the time the stranger asked for something more specific, something related to the restricted zones of the Natanz facility, Farhad was already committed. He wasn't doing it for the money anymore. He was doing it because for the first time in his life, he felt powerful. The invisible man had found a way to be seen. Chapter 3. The Architecture of the Lie. The transition from a business source to an operational asset is the most dangerous phase of espionage. If the subject panics, if they go to the authorities, the entire network can be rolled up. The handler, a man Farhad knew only as Dr. Amir, had to manage this transition with the precision of a surgeon. The meeting took place in Istanbul. Farhad had traveled there ostensibly to meet his wife and son after the successful surgery. A surgery paid for by the foundation. The joy of seeing his son's pink cheeks, the boy breathing without wheezing, acted as the ultimate psychological anchor. Farhad was now indebted. In a hotel room overlooking the Bosphorus, Dr. Amir finally dropped the veneer, though only slightly. He didn't say Israel. He didn't say Zionist entity. He simply said, "We represent a group of nations that are very concerned about the safety of the facility where you work. We want to prevent a war, Farhad, a war that would destroy Tehran." It was a brilliant framing. It turned treason into patriotism. By helping them, Farhad wasn't betraying Iran. He was saving it from the reckless ambitions of the mullahs. "I am just a cleaner," Farhad whispered, his hands trembling slightly as he held a cup of tea. "I don't know formulas. I don't know physics." "We don't need you to know physics," Dr. Amir said, leaning forward. "We have all the physicists we need. We need your access. We need your badge." They laid out the plan. It wasn't about stealing documents. That was old school. It was about placement. They needed Farhad to place a device, a specific piece of hardware that looked innocuous but carried a digital payload that would change history. The training was compressed into 4 intense days. Farhad wasn't trained to shoot a gun or drive a car at high speeds. He was trained in the art of being boring. He was taught how to check for surveillance, how to communicate via dead drops, leaving items in prearranged locations, and most importantly, how to control his own adrenaline. When you walk through the security checkpoint, Dr. Amir instructed, you must not think about what you are carrying. You must think about your dinner. Think about the traffic. Think about the stain on your shoe. If you think about the device, your heart rate will rise. Your pupils will dilate. The guards are trained to see fear. You must show them nothing. They practice the mechanics of the badge. In Natanz, the security system was tiered. A blue badge got you into the administration block. A yellow badge got you into the logistics area. But Farhad, because he was a cleaner, held a generic gray badge with a magnetic strip that, paradoxically, had wider access than some scientists. Why? Because dirt doesn't respect security clearance. Trash needs to be collected from the server rooms just as it does from the cafeteria. The badge was the key, but it was also the alibi. If he was stopped in a high-security corridor, his excuse was always ready. There was a spill. The trash bin is full. The supervisor ordered a deep clean. No guard wants to inspect a trash bag. No guard wants to argue with the man holding a mop. By the time Farhad flew back to Tehran, he wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was a carrier. He was carrying a device concealed within the hollowed-out handle of a commercial floor buffer. A device that contained the digital DNA of Stuxnet. Chapter 4. The Fortress and the Filter. Natanz is not just a building, it is a city underground. To enter, one must pass through 3 rings of security. The first is the perimeter, guarded by the Revolutionary Guard. They check vehicles for explosives. The second is the Personnel Processing Center, where biometrics, fingerprints, and retinal scans are verified. The third is the Clean Zone entry, where employees strip out of their street clothes, pass through air showers to remove dust, and don facility-specific coveralls. Farhad arrived at the facility at 06 when, just as the sun was bleeding over the Zagros Mountains. He rode the company bus with 20 other sleepy workers. He held his lunch pail. He held his breath. The device was already inside. This was the genius of the Mossad's logistics. They hadn't asked Farhad to smuggle the device through the X-ray machines on his body. That would have been suicide. Instead, they had compromised the supply chain of the cleaning company itself. Weeks earlier, a shipment of new industrial cleaning equipment, buffers, vacuums, solvents, had been intercepted in a warehouse in Dubai before being shipped to Iran. Mossad technicians had carefully dismantled a Kerker floor polisher. Inside the motor housing, wrapped in lead shielding to defeat X-rays, they placed a small, ruggedized computer module. It was wired into the polisher's power supply. All Farhad had to do was locate that specific polisher, identifiable by a microscopic scratch on the serial number plate, and wheel it into the target zone. He passed through the first checkpoint. The guard, a young conscript, barely looked at his face. He scanned the badge. Beep. Green light. Move along, the guard muttered. Farhad walked through the turnstiles. The invisibility was working. He went to the locker room, changed into his gray jumpsuit, and pinned his badge to his chest. This piece of plastic was his shield. He made his way to the equipment storage room. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Think about dinner, he told himself. Rice and stew. Rice and stew. He scanned the row of floor polishers. There it was, the scratch on the plate. He gripped the handle. It felt normal, heavy, solid. He unplugged it from the charging station and began to wheel it toward the freight elevator that led down to Hall A, the centrifuge hall. The elevator ride was the longest minute of his life. He was descending 50 feet underground. The air pressure changed, popping his ears. When the doors opened, the sound hit him. The high-pitched whine of thousands of IR-1 centrifuges spinning at supersonic speeds. It was a sound that vibrated in the teeth. Hall A was a cathedral of technology. Rows upon rows of silver cylinders, connected by cascading pipes, enriching uranium gas. This was the pride of the nation, and Farhad was just the man here to shine the floors. Chapter 5. The Air Gap. The target was not the centrifuges themselves. You can't destroy a centrifuge with a floor polisher. The target was the control room, specifically the SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System. These computers controlled the speed of the rotors, the pressure of the gas, the very heartbeat of the enrichment process. The SCADA system was air-gapped. It had no connection to the internet, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. To infect it, you needed physical access to the USB ports or the network cables. Farhad pushed the polisher down the long observation corridor. He saw scientists in white coats monitoring screens. He saw the shift supervisor drinking tea. He began to buff the floor, the machine humming loudly, blending in with the whine of the centrifuges, back and forth, the rhythm of labor. He worked his way toward the server maintenance access door. This door was usually locked, but the spill protocol allowed for exceptions. He took a small flask of water from his pocket and poured a puddle near the door. He waited. A technician walked out of the server room, nearly slipping. "Hey, watch it!" the technician shouted. "I am sorry, sir. I am sorry." Farhad apologized, bowing his head. "A leak from the cooler. I need to clean inside the threshold to make sure it doesn't short the circuits." The technician looked at the puddle, then at the lowly janitor. He didn't see a spy. He saw a nuisance. "Make it quick. Don't touch anything." The technician held the door open. Farhad pushed the polisher inside the server antechamber. He was in. The air was cool here, smelling of ozone and anti-static plastic. Now came the technical part. The Mossad engineers had designed the device and the polisher to be active. Farhad didn't need to plug the polisher into a computer. He just needed to plug the polisher into the room's power outlet, the same circuit that powered the network racks. The device utilized a technology known as power line communication, PLC injection, combined with a high-powered radio frequency capability. Once the polisher was plugged into the maintenance outlet, it would send electrical noise down the copper wiring of the building. This noise was actually data. It would search for unshielded network cables running in the same conduits. Farhad found the outlet. He plugged in the cord. The polisher roared to life. He began to clean the floor of the small room, his eyes darting to the blinking lights of the server racks. 1 minute, Dr. Amir had said. "We need the machine running for at least 60 seconds to handshake with the system." 50 seconds. The technician was watching him from the doorway, tapping his foot impatiently. "Missed a spot there," the technician said. "Yes, sir," Farhad said, moving the machine over the same spot again. 60 seconds. The light on the polisher's handle, a tiny LED that looked like a power indicator, blinked from red to solid green. The payload had jumped. The worm was in the system. "Finished," Farhad said, unplugging the machine. "It is dry now." "Get out," the technician said. Farhad wheeled the machine out, his back sweat-soaked, his legs feeling like jelly. He had just delivered the most sophisticated cyber weapon in history, and all he had done was clean a floor. Chapter 6. The Slow Burn. The genius of Operation Dust Devil and the malware it delivered was patience. If the centrifuges had exploded immediately, the Iranians would have locked down the facility, found the janitor, and executed him within the hour. But the code was designed to lie dormant. It waited. It watched. It recorded the normal operating parameters of the plant. It wanted to know what normal looked like so it could fake it. Farhad finished his shift. He returned the polisher to storage. He showered, changed back into his street clothes, and took the bus back to Tehran. He didn't run. He went home, cooked dinner for his wife and son, and watched television. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then slowly, the madness began inside Natanz. The centrifuges began to behave erratically. The virus would command the rotors to spin up to 1,400 hertz, speeds that would cause the aluminum tubes to vibrate and crack. Then, just as suddenly, it would slow them down to a crawl. The stress on the materials was catastrophic. But in the control room, the screens that the scientists trusted, showed everything was normal. The virus was intercepting the sensor data and replaying old, safe loops to the operators. It was gaslighting the entire Iranian nuclear program. Centrifuges began to disintegrate. The sound of shattering metal echoed through Hall A. Scientists were baffled. They blamed the manufacturers. They blamed the magnets. They blamed each other. They fired the maintenance crews. They replaced the equipment, only for the new machines to destroy themselves a week later. The paranoia set in. The Iranian counterintelligence, the Vivak, swept the facility. They interrogated the engineers. They looked for sabotage in the supply chain. But they were looking for bad parts, not bad code. And they certainly weren't looking at the floors. Farhad continued to go to work every day. He walked past the chaos. He saw the piles of broken centrifuges being hauled out to the scrapyard. He saw the fear in the eyes of the scientists who were being accused of incompetence. He felt a cold knot in his stomach. He knew that eventually they would widen the circle. Eventually they would check the logs of who entered the server rooms. Eventually the invisibility would wear off. He sent a signal to Dr. Amir, a simple chalk mark on a specific lamppost in Tehran. Get me out. Chapter 7. The Closing Net. The extraction of an asset is often more dangerous than the insertion. An asset inside is valuable. An asset running for the border is a liability. But Mossad adheres to a code. You do not leave your people behind, even if they were just rented for a season. To do so would ensure no one else would ever sign up. However, the Iranians were waking up. Cybersecurity experts from Belarus had been flown in to diagnose the Natanz failures. They had finally discovered the anomaly in the SCADA code. They realized it wasn't a mechanical failure. It was an attack. The lockdown was immediate. Natanz was sealed. No one in, no one out. The investigation turned ruthless. They began reviewing CCTV footage from the past 6 months, looking for any deviation in protocol. It was a Tuesday when Farhad arrived at the bus depot and saw the black vans of the VVAC. They weren't checking badges anymore. They were checking names against a list. Farhad didn't get on the bus. He turned around, walking calmly away until he rounded a corner. Then he ran. He ran to a safe house, a small carpet shop in the bazaar owned by an old Jewish merchant who had been serving the agency for decades as a sayan, helper. They are coming, Farhad gasped, collapsing onto a pile of rugs. The merchant locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. He handed Farhad a prepaid mobile phone with a single number programmed into it. Call, the merchant said. They have a plan. The plan was not a comfortable flight out of Imam Khomeini Airport. That was impossible now. The plan was the mountains. The same mountains the smugglers used. The same mountains where the Kurds fought. But Farhad had his wife and sick son. He couldn't hike over the Zagros in winter. We cannot leave them, Farhad told the voice on the phone. I will surrender before I leave them. We know. Dr. Amir's voice said, calm as ever. Go to the safe location. We are arranging a wedding. Chapter 8. The Wedding Convoy. In the lexicon of espionage, a wedding is a cover for moving a large group of people or high-value cargo in plain sight. In Iran, wedding convoys, processions of cars, honking horns decorated with ribbons, are common. They are loud, chaotic, and generally respected by traffic police. Mossad operatives in Tehran rented 3 Land Cruisers. They decorated them with flowers. They hired a local band to play traditional music in the lead vehicle. They dressed Farhad in a suit, his wife in a formal chador, and placed his son in the back seat. They weren't heading to a reception hall. They were heading to the border with Azerbaijan. The journey was a gauntlet of nerves. Every checkpoint was a roll of the dice. At a roadblock near Kazvin, a revolutionary guard stopped the convoy. Papers, the guard demanded, his hand resting on his Kalashnikov. The driver, a deep-cover operative with nerves of steel, smiled broadly. It is my brother's wedding. We are going to his village. Come, have a sweet. He thrust a box of pastries at the guard. Underneath the pastries was a stack of rials, enough to feed the guard's family for a month. The guard looked at the money, then at the groom, Farhad, who was sweating profusely. He looks nervous, the guard joked. Marriage is a prison, my friend. Good luck. He waved them through. But the VVAC was closing the loop. They had raided Farhad's apartment. They found it empty. They found the medical records from Germany. They connected the dots. An alert went out to all border crossings. Stop the janitor. Shoot to kill. Chapter 9. The River Crossing. The convoy ditched the cars 5 miles from the Aras River, which marks the border between Iran and Azerbaijan. The wedding was over. Now it was a foot race in the dark. The terrain was rocky and unforgiving. Farhad carried his son on his back. His wife stumbled, her chador tearing on the thorns. The Mossad extraction team, 4 men armed with silenced MP5s, formed a protective diamond around the family. "Move," the team leader whispered. "We have 3 miles. The patrol drones will be up in 20 minutes." They moved through a dry wadi, using the depression to hide their thermal signature. Farhad could hear the hum of engines in the distance. Border patrols. They reached the riverbank. The Aras is swift and cold. Waiting on the other side, in the darkness of Azerbaijan, were the headlights of 2 vehicles. But between them lay 100 meters of freezing water. The team deployed an inflatable Zodiac raft, hidden in the brush by an advance team days earlier. As they pushed the raft into the water, a flare popped in the sky. Stark, blinding white light bathed the riverbank. "Contact," the team leader shouted. Automatic fire erupted from the ridge behind them. The Iranians had found them. Bullets whipped the water, kicking up sprays of mud. "Get them in the boat." Farhad threw his son into the raft, then pulled his wife in. He scrambled aboard as the operatives returned fire, suppressing the Iranian position. The raft motor roared to life. They shot across the black water. The operatives in the rear of the boat fired single disciplined shots at the muzzle flashes on the Iranian side. It took less than 2 minutes to cross, but for Farhad, it felt like an eternity. He shielded his son's body with his own. He waited for the impact of a bullet. It never came. The raft slammed into the mud of the Azeri bank. Hands reached out to pull them up. Azeri special forces, working in coordination with Israeli liaisons, dragged them to the waiting armored SUVs. As they sped away into the night, Farhad looked back. The Iranian bank was swarming with lights. He was gone. He was a ghost who had crossed back into the land of the living. Chapter 10. The debrief Tel Aviv. A sterile room with comfortable chairs. Farhad sat with a cup of coffee. He was clean-shaven, wearing new clothes. His family was in a safe apartment by the beach. His son was playing with a PlayStation. Dr. Amir sat opposite him. There were no lights in his eyes this time. Just a file recorder. "You did well, Farhad," Amir said. "Is it over?" Farhad asked. "For you, yes. For them, no." Amir slid a tablet across the table. It showed satellite imagery of Natanz. It showed piles of equipment being removed. It showed the delay of the Iranian nuclear program by an estimated 2 years. "The device you planted," Amir explained, "created a bridge. We were able to introduce a digital cancer. They are tearing the facility apart trying to find it. They have fired their top generals. They have executed 3 scientists suspected of treason. They are eating themselves." Farhad looked at the image. "I just wanted to save my son." "And you did," Amir said. "But you also saved thousands of others, maybe millions. War has been postponed, my friend." Farhad didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had survived a shipwreck. He looked at his hands, the hands that had held a mop, the hands that had held the future of the Middle East. Chapter 11. The New Identity. You cannot go back to being a janitor after you have destroyed a nuclear program. Farhad and his family could never return to Iran. They could never use their real names again. The Mossad relocation program is thorough. They don't just give you a passport, they give you a history. Farhad became a shopkeeper in a quiet suburb of Toronto, Canada. Or perhaps it was Melbourne, Australia, or a small town in France. The location is the only detail that remains truly classified. He was given a story about being a political refugee. He was given language lessons. He was given enough money to buy a small business and ensure his son's medical needs were met for life. But there is a cost. The cost is the silence. Farhad could never tell his son the truth about how they got there. He could never tell his neighbors. He had to live with the secret that he, a simple man with a gray badge, had outsmarted the entire Iranian regime. He would watch the news sometimes. He would see the reports about tensions in the Gulf, about sanctions, about the nuclear deal. He would smile a sad, private smile. He knew that power wasn't always about missiles or speeches. Sometimes power was just a floor polisher plugged into the wrong wall. Chapter 12. The Legacy of Dust Operation. Dust Devil changed the game. It proved that the era of absolute security was over. It proved that cyber warfare wasn't just about hackers in hoodies sitting in basements. It was about physical access. It was about the human element. The Iranians eventually purged their systems. They rebuilt Natanz. They installed new centrifuges. But the psychological damage was permanent. They could never trust their own equipment again. They could never trust their own staff again. Every flickering light, every slow computer, every mechanical vibration became a source of terror. Is it them? Are they back? The Janitor's badge became a symbol in the intelligence world. It taught agencies around the globe that while they were looking at the sky for airstrikes, they should have been looking at the ground, at the people sweeping up the dust. In the end, the most sophisticated nuclear facility in the world was brought to its knees not by a bomb, but by a father who loved his son, and a badge that opened the door to the heart of the machine. This is how the Mossad works. Not with James Bond stunts, but with the ruthless exploitation of the ordinary. They find the cracks in the wall, and they pour water into them until the ice shatters the stone. If this story of invisible warfare, high-stakes espionage, and the human cost of secret operations kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who thinks they understand how the world works. And tell us in the comments, do you think the cyber war is a safer alternative to kinetic war? Or does it just push the danger into the shadows? Subscribe for more. The next file is already open on my desk, and you won't believe what's inside.